Welcome to Hustle and Pro, talking sports from youth to pro. We'll bring you compelling stories from athletes, coaches, professionals, and fans, all with the common thread of something we love to do and to watch and to talk about sports. We're here at Visual Learning Solutions Studios in Frisco, Texas. I'm your host, Kelly Walker. Today is really exciting. We have some huge announcements and some updates about the show that I can't wait to get to. So after a quick word from our sponsor, we will be right back. We'll learn who our guest is today, and we'll get started with episode 129 of Hustle and Pro. This episode is sponsored by Visit Frisco. Be a good sport and enjoy all that Frisco, Texas has in store for you. Single players, spectators, and teams. No matter your travel style, the city that plays always has something fun on deck. Bring your friends, family, and fans to play along. Explore Frisco restaurants, shopping, and things to do at visitfrisco.com. That's visitfrisco.com. Welcome to Hustle and Pro. So as some of you may know, we have made some changes lately, and we're going to touch on some of the kind of frequently asked questions that I get and highlights of what's going on with us. And to help us do that, my friend and former colleague is joining us, Nicole Barron. Welcome, Nicole.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
I'm asking you on because you have been a cheerleader of Hustle and Pro sort of since before day one, actually, right? So because you and I worked together at Lifestyle Frisco, you saw the beginning of this as I was writing articles and wanting to turn them into audio podcasts. And you saw me, jotting out logos on pieces of paper and all the questions and what do I do? And you have been a supporter since the very beginning. So thank you for that. But that's part of why I wanted to have you on today, so we could kind of do a little reset and talk about it.
Yes. I am a huge fan. I always say that I'm so impressed by the way you've hustled. Yes, we got to say hustle and pro. But you've worked so hard to build this, and it's really impressive.
Thanks. And just to kind of let people know, normally when I have a guest on, we go through their sports background and all the sports you played and what level you played and all these things. So with you, you're not so much the sporty person. You're not really the big sports fan, but you are a sports parent now and a sports wife. Your husband has been a guest on this show, Oliver. So I know that you might not have grown up in sports like me, but you've grown accustomed to being a Frisco sports parent. So you also qualify to be on the show just for that.
Well, thank you. You know what else probably qualifies me? Because you're right. When I told my husband I was doing this today and joining you, he was like, why? like, what do you have to offer the sports podcast, right? But I am in about season 13 or so of the fantasy football league. So you should know that I at least have that to boast about, in addition to, the
great.
Soccer mom stuff. So I've got some stuff going on, sports arena.
That's great. I didn't know you were playing fantasy. I'm retired from fantasy right now because it changed the way I was watching the Cowboys and I didn't like it. I was rooting for some other players. So, but that's good. I'm proud of you for doing fantasy.
Thanks.
That's fantastic. Well, so I wanted to you to join us today because, like I said, there's just been some changes and you're involved in those changes throughout the last 10 months or so. And so I thought, okay, what better person to kind of update our listeners and viewers on what that means. So let's get started.
Yeah, absolutely. So probably those that have been following you, and of course I've been, closer than some, have noticed that things have changed a little bit. And so I think you should share with everyone kind of what that journey has been, what led to those changes. H&P now has a new website, and I hear that you're going to unveil a whole new format. So let's talk about that. I want to know what those changes
are. Throughout the early part of 2021, we knew that Lifestyle Frisco, who published and hosted my show all these couple years, we knew that was going to come to an end in this summer. So the end of June was the last time that Hustle and Pro would be published through Lifestyle Frisco, meaning the episodes have a page on lifestylefrisco.com, and that's how it would get sort of shared and pushed out. So when Lifestyle Frisco made some changes, I had the opportunity to make some changes also. With the show, I could keep it. They were super gracious and said, do you want to keep doing this? Or I could just sort of let it let it go. At that time, it was, 2 years in and probably like 100 something episodes in. And so, um, deciding to keep it, I knew that I needed a place for it to live. So hustleandpro.com was created, and that has a home base for all the episodes and things like that. And over the summer, um, Lifestyle Frisco was super gracious in that they also helped me technically move archives over so that I really didn't lose audience. If you're a Apple Podcast listener and you were subscribed already, nothing really changed, and you shouldn't hear anything different. You might not even know that the July 1st and beyond were completely different. So that would be a good thing that you didn't know. If you're a subscriber, it sort of just rolled on through and nothing would change. But there's a new website, new team. My old team at Lifestyle Frisco isn't helping me anymore. You were a part of that team. I had people, interns that were editing and doing different things, and you would always put the final touches on things and hit publish and get them out the door. So I have a different group of people that are behind the scenes helping me. Obviously, this format doesn't happen on its own. And so, yeah, so the new look is kind of my big, I'm not putting this out there anywhere, but my mind, it's Hustle and Pro 2.0. It's sort of this
Yeah.
new rebirth of what the show looks like. Content wise, it's not going to be different. I know we can talk more about that, but so yeah, that is what is new as of July 1st, 2021.
So, did you at any point? I mean, it's a little bit overwhelming. You've got this momentum. You've been doing it a certain way. Now it's like crossroads. Did you at all consider maybe I just let it go and I quit and I don't do this anymore?
To be honest, for a split second, I did, because it's a lot of work. It was a lot of work before this change because, I've always done everything soup to nuts. I think of who my guests are, or if someone gives them to me. We book, schedule studio, actually record, edit, get things out the door, market, make sure people know about it. It is a lot of work. So for a
Mhm.
second, I thought, well, can I even commit to doing all that? Do I want to? But it was quickly, the answer is yes. I think you were actually on a conference call when that question was posed to me, and I probably said yes pretty fast because I just knew, bottom line was, I didn't want to let it go. Letting it go just sort of meant like 2+ years of all this effort and excitement and energy and this little community of people I've built about this show would be just sort of gone. So I didn't want to leave
Yeah.
it. So thinking about shutting it down for a split second, but realistically, no. I knew that whether this is going to be a hobby that it looks like or a day job that it looks like, whatever shape it would take later, I would figure that out later, which
Yeah.
is now where we are. But I knew I wanted to keep going.
Good. Well, I'm so glad that you did because the momentum is awesome, and as you said, the community of relationships you've built, and there's no end to. I mean, Sports City USA, right? There's just so much. So for those that don't know, why did you start a sports podcast? Of all the topics you could, you've got a whole lot of different things going on in your life, but it was sports for you. Why is that? What's your background?
For sure. Definitely sports for me. Any of my girlfriends know, like, I'm not the kind of person that's going to chat with you about like hair or makeup or fashion or decorations or all the other thing, wine, all the things that my girlfriends talk about. It's really just sports for me is sort of what I'm comfortable with. It's my passion from growing up. I'll give a quick recap for those who don't know. So, gosh, my first experience, I guess, with sports was at age 3. My parents, our family business was a gymnastics, a gym, place, like a full blown competitive gym, where I'm from in Waco. And so I was this tiny little kid growing up, on the beam, running around in the foam pit and on floor. And that was sort of just normal to me. My older sisters were gymnasts. And then at probably age 4 or 5, whenever you start kicking soccer balls around, I did that also. I shifted a little as I got older into softball. When gymnastics got a little bit too competitive for me and I didn't love it anymore, I got out of that and switched over to softball. Fell in love with that. My sister's only a year ahead of me in school, so we were mostly able to play sports together a lot in little league a lot of our lives. And my dad coached us, so softball was a big deal. It was such a big deal after my dad passed away when I was in high school. My high school did not have a softball team yet. So my mom, being the mom that she is, and she's a sporty mom too, we chartered our high school softball team because I was
Wow.
aged out of some little league and I wanted to keep playing, and so did my sister. And so we like, went through all the paperwork and steps and we made softball happen at our high school. And I'm so glad we did because it gave us a chance to, do our thing and also have the school spirit. So, and mixed in with all that, I also cheered. Starting in middle school, I cheered. I played basketball. I didn't really get into volleyball till an adult, which is funny because now that's like the Frisco female thing is such a big scene here is volleyball.
Yeah.
Um, I switched from middle school to high school. I switched completely like school districts, and so I wasn't able to roll into high school sports automatically. Like some sports you have to try out for in the spring or the summer. So I learned a new sport my freshman year, which was tennis, and played varsity tennis for a little while. So I've just always been an athlete that loves to do all kinds of sports, trying different things. But then part of our family culture also was going to sports games because we're only a few hours from Waco to Dallas. Going to a Rangers baseball game was a huge reward, like for good grades or something like that. So those were just like cherished memories that I carry on to our kids. And Nicole, we're pretty much always at a sporting
Hmm.
event, whether it's the Rough Riders, FC Dallas, the Legends. We don't go to very many Cowboys games, but you can be sure we're like tuned in at 110% watching them. So it's just
Yeah.
sort of like my thing, our family's thing.
Yeah, I know. I have never known anyone like you, Kelly, and it's the coolest thing ever. Like you are the one of the coolest girls I know because you are so well versed at so many sports. You're also though an amazing mom, an amazing wife. You serve your community, so you're just really cool all the way around. But and I commend
Thank
you
you.
because on the pod, you're welcome. On the podcast, it's so cool because even someone like me who did not participate in any of that growing up, I find your content so engaging because you are so relatable. You make it's conversational, and so I'll listen to something about cheer. I never cheered, but I remember loving that episode, and lacrosse and various things, and it's just so engaging whether you ever did it or not. So good job to
Thank
you for that.
you. And I want to like talk about some of those episodes too, because those are good memories and sort of what I'm looking at to do in the future. But first, I want to take a quick break. We have another quick word from a sponsor, so we will be right back after that quick break. This episode is sponsored by Tumbleweed Textiles. Tumbleweed Textiles t-shirts, hats, tanks, sweatshirts, collared shirts, plus houseware items, and so much more are authentically Texan. Their unique designs are hand-drawn and inspired by Texas music, history, food, and fun. Find the latest from Tumbleweed Textiles online at shoptwt.com, or better yet, visit the Tumbleweed Textiles flagship store in the heart of the Rail District on Main Street in Frisco, Texas. And now, back to the show. Welcome back. We're back with Nicole Barron, and we're talking about the latest and greatest with what I'm calling Hustle and Pro 2.0. So, Nicole, you were just talking about how people like you might listen to an episode and it might not be your lane, right? But
Yeah.
that's part of also why I love doing this and hosting this. I mean, I've had some off the beaten path kinds of guests that I've learned a lot. I
Mhm.
mean, I've learned about chess and Formula One and mixed martial arts and all kinds of different things. So that is another reason that I am passionate about this because it's also kind of expanding my sports encyclopedia too.
I'm glad you mentioned that about chess because I remember that one well because it was a mutual friend of ours that you had on, and that was so good. And I was like, chess? What do I care about chess? But it was such a good episode. People need to find it. So yeah, for 2.5 years you've been doing this. That's a lot of guests. How do you find them? Do you ever are you ever stumped? Like, gosh, I'm running out of people. Does that happen?
Well, no, it doesn't because of where we live. You mentioned Sports City USA at the beginning.
Yep.
And because this is youth to pro, it's sort of endless because I could see how if it was I'm just looking for pro athletes, while there are a lot here, like the four corners of the stars, legends, Rough Riders, there's tons. That would kind of run out a little bit. But a friend that actually worked for FC Dallas in marketing at the time said, don't just do pro, talk to youth athletes because those are actually going to be really compelling stories that people will want to share and hear more about anyway. So the
Yeah.
nature of talking to these high school and sometimes even younger athletes is this pool of really amazing individuals that happen to be athletes that have cool stories, whether it's getting over an injury or getting cut from a team or,
Mhm.
having a goal to play in college at a certain level, all these different things. They have a lot to say. So,
Mhm.
no, I'm not running out of guests anytime soon.
Do you have some favorites? I know you're excited about every episode, but like you've got archives now, 2.5 years. What is this? Episode 129, I think you said. So awesome.
Right. Right.
And
It
so
is,
in
yeah.
the
I do
archives,
have
what
some
should
favorites.
we yeah, tell us because anyone who's new to your show needs to go find those.
Okay. So I do have favorites. It's hard though because with 100 and I've recorded 100 and yeah, 29 at least. Now the favorites list is getting really long. But because FC Dallas is so important to me and the Rough Riders, they always keep topping my list of like my pro interview favorites. I've
Right.
had like 8 FC Dallas players on now, and I was at an FC Dallas game last night, and it's really cool. Like I feel a lot of pride when I look at the starting lineup and half of them have been on this show, some more than once. And so
You
Edwin
should.
Cerrillo was one of my favorite FC Dallas interviews because I saw that a press release that he signed his pro contract. He's from my hometown. I just wanted to talk to him. And I think he was scared to death. I was a little bit scared because we were at the stadium and it was just, the scene was intimidating. And, but just hearing his cool story of sacrifice, I've talked about it a lot. So I won't go into it, but I love that I got to talk to Edwin Cerrillo at the like day one of his pro career. And now he's like a starter on the team. Anyways, and then Reggie Cannon is another FC Dallas player, and Ryan Hollingshead. They both have really inspirational stories. Besides the fact that they're pro athletes, that's cool in itself, but they're really good people and really good men and husbands. And so I am honored that I got to talk to them. Some of my youth interviews that are memorable, one of my very first ones, Hannah Mandel, she was a Wakeland soccer player.
I remember
She
that one.
impressed me from like the first moment
Mm.
I met her because she's not an athlete only focused in identity being in soccer. She was a multi-sport athlete, but she spent so much of her time and energy helping in the community. She was president of I want to say an environmental club at school. She was, I think, valedictorian or close to being that when I
Of
talked to
course she
her.
was, right?
Just
Yes,
this
that's
this well-rounded young lady who her
awesome.
goals were so unique to her. It wasn't just I'm going to go play D1. She actually wanted a smaller school environment so she could make an impact in these other ways in her life. So Hannah, and I'm going to get her back on soon because I want to see what she's up to 3 years later. But Hannah was really memorable. Just recently, I had Gavin Cross on, who was a college football player, who in 2 days in the middle of summer had a heat stroke on the field and collapsed and almost died and was his body shut down and he needed a liver transplant like within hours. It was just this incredible story. Like listening to him talk me through his story, it just gave me chills.
Mm,
Same with Becky Thomas, I recently had on this summer,
yeah.
and she's been one of the most popular episodes. And it's gymnastics, which obviously, because you heard me talk about gymnastics earlier, I wanted to have Becky on. Her late husband, Kurt Thomas, it's the namesake of Kurt Thomas Gymnastics, which is right there. If there wasn't a wall right here, I could see their gym.
Yeah.
And so having her on was really touching. I cried during that episode because
Mhm.
so much of what
Yeah.
she was saying was just like hitting me in my heart with my family. So, those are a few to speak of. There's tons and tons more. I could probably go on for way too long, but those are some of the ones that kind of come to mind first. Oh, and then of course I don't want to not say your husband because
Oh,
um
well.
you I don't know if you know this, but having Oliver on that was like a changing point in my life. And this is silly. People are going to think this is silly, but do you
What?
remember the title of his episode or the topic?
I remember what it was about. I remember the topic, yes. It was like,
Okay.
weren't you going back through the best sports moments or something?
Yeah.
Wasn't that
So,
it?
yeah, but we
I did
called
listen.
it
I
Game
heard.
Changers.
Yes, that
we
was it.
we were
That
like
was
talking, okay, who are the game
it.
changers in
Yeah,
sports? Like Jackie Robinson, all these.
yeah.
We wanted to kind of pinpoint like who have actually changed landscapes of different sports. So when I was researching for my list, I came across Game Changers, which is a documentary about
Mhm.
plant-based eating and this whole thing. And it opened up. I had already been kind of not eating meat, and it opened up this whole thing because it was specifically about athletes who don't eat meat. And it's the Arnold Schwarzenegger documentary. If you Many people listening have probably heard of it. If you haven't, go Google it. It's amazing. It actually changed my life in that it's how I eat now for these past several years. It changed. I had my husband watch it. The credits rolled. He was like, I'm done. I'm not eating meat either. It's just really interesting. And several of my friends have also taken on a lot less meat or completely plant based. So, yeah. So the episode with Oliver
That's fun.
indirectly changed a lot about how I live. Yeah.
Very
Just kind of a
indirectly,
random
but
side note.
I remember you sharing that with me now. Yeah, that's really awesome. Well, one of the cool things about all those guests you mentioned is how inspiring. Like, you're not just talking about the nuts and bolts of a sport. Like, how do you play lacrosse? No, that's not what you're doing. You are sharing stories that have a lot of impact. They're really inspiring and inspirational. So I think, yeah, keep doing that because it's so good. So let's talk a little bit more about the new format because I'm looking at you right now with this like super cool setup. I love it, and you
Thank
deserve
you.
it. And I want to hear more about what's different, like what's going on. We've got video now. It's really good.
Yeah,
Tell me
I
more.
mean, this is a huge difference. People listening on podcast platforms, nothing will change. It's totally fine. And you don't have
Right.
to change the way you consume Hustle and Pro. But because I wanted to have another option, I did. I partnered up with our friends at Visual Learning Solutions. They're a Frisco based business with a really great studio, literally in the same building that I used to record the podcast in. That was an audio only studio. And so I just sort of moved over a few suites and partnered up with them to be in this amazing studio. They've built out this space for me, and I hope other podcasters. I have a lot of podcasting friends. I hope others try to use it too because I listen to a lot of podcasts. It's kind of my go-to when I'm in the car alone or when I'm working out or just wanting some side noise when I'm working. And I listen to a lot of
Mhm.
podcasts. But some of the ones I listen to, they refer to visuals as they're talking or interviewing people. And so I do go back and I find it. I want to see like or clips of what they were looking
Yeah,
like or what the guests looked like and how they were engaging. And so I have
me
always
too.
wanted to have that level. I just never had the ability to or the access to or the resources to do it. And so yeah, so my friends over here that we knew from our old life at Lifestyle Frisco down the hall, they said, "Well, let's collaborate. Let's let you, check out this new studio." And of course, I said, "Absolutely." Um, so I needed the technology that they have to kind of take Hustle and Pro to the next level. So now it's not just audio, it's also a video show.
Yeah, it's really impressive. It's you look so you deserve it. I mean, as I said, 2.5 years you've been working so hard at this, and I've always heard that in order to build a podcast, you got to give yourself at least I don't know what is the magic number, 100 episodes or something before you really have built an audience, and you've got to find that momentum and that what does your audience want to hear, and you've done it, girl. Like it's amazing. I'm sure you're still learning and growing and all of that, but
Thank you.
it's
I
not
am
for the
still
weak at
learning. I
heart.
mean, if I got to where I wasn't still like learning anything new about it, it would probably get boring and I'd go, I'm not sure if I'm gonna
Right.
keep
It gets
doing this.
stale.
If it's so autopilot that it's expected and I'm not like enjoying each episode anymore, that's just maybe that's time to think of revisiting it or shutting it off or something like that. But yeah, I'm definitely still learning. I mean, I have a lot of guests coming up that I'm so excited about because I want people to see them visually instead of me just seeing them, when I'm recording in front of them or on Zoom or something. I want people to be
Mhm.
able to see them. I have a former Dallas Cowboys and longtime NFL kind of legend he lives here in Frisco. He will come on hopefully really soon. We've got some nutrition based topics coming up soon that have been one of my most popular episodes. People like hearing about nutrition in sports and how their athletes can thrive. Got some of that coming up, and some, of course, like I mentioned, some really good youth athletes that are excelling or their coaches said, "Hey, talk to these kids. They're doing something great." So it's just exciting. I'm very excited about all of the different changes and the new ways that our audience can find us at Hustle and Pro. So we're on YouTube. This video portion is how you can find us on YouTube. And there will be links to YouTube and all the places you can find us, which is Instagram and Twitter. And of course, all the podcast platforms. There will be links to all that on hustleandpro.com. So Nicole, thank you so much for taking time
You're
to
welcome.
to join us remotely and run me through this sort of update for our listeners.
You're welcome. Thank you for inviting me. It's always fun to hang out with you for a little bit. So Keep doing
And
what you're
thank you
doing.
for
Awesome.
And thank you for listening to this episode or watching this episode of Hustle and Pro. However, you find us and watch us and consume us, please subscribe and like us and comment, review, share. It's easy and it's free for you guys. It means a whole lot to me. It helps me grow our audience. And when you subscribe, it'll roll on up to your playlist so that the next time there's a new episode, you can enjoy. Thank you.